when you're dealing with really big issues, whether it's climate or inequality or brain science, philanthropic capital will never be enough. It's not that it's bad, but it will never be enough. And so the good news is that me and some other people back in 2001 started working on what I call the scaffolding, which is the corporate form and design and financing around companies, so that when I listen to the scientists here who are doing just such innovative work around brain science, I think, my God, you are really making a difference. And then you put yourself in the same structure, which ends up destroying democracy. So I'm sorry, I'm not a tech lawyer. I don't quite understand it. And what I'm gonna do today is introduce you very, very briefly to some alternative structures. And the good news for the science and brain science is that these have been tested and tried. In fact, you know, the PBC, which we're gonna cover, like when we first introduced it, I would go to New York and people would tell me go back to Berkeley and my Birkenstocks. Now, there are 23 publicly traded PBCs on NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. There are companies like Patagonia and Change.org that are fundamentally changing how they are structured. And many of these companies are small, they are for profit, and they are doing it in a way. And so I'm going to introduce you to a couple of these structures just very briefly. The second reason I'm here today, I think, is because I'm a science groupie. And in this space, I really think it's for my father. My father was a philosophy professor in the field of science and technology and spent the last 30 years working on brain science at the PET lab at Duke. And so I think some of this just rubbed off on me, and in terms of my fascination for what you all do. And the third is in my personal journey in 2001. The only reason I think I was able to see this so clearly was because of tools and a lot of work, a lot of tools that other people gave me to control my own brain. Because when you are able to have some measure of control of your own brain, you're actually able to show up and think about other people and think about solutions that benefit other people, because you're not just thinking about yourself. And I know that sounds really trite and simple, but it took me quite a while to learn that. And so I'm eternally grateful. So the word of warning about these slides is I am a lawyer, and we're paid by the word. And so there are a whole bunch of words on these slides. I'm gonna leave them with Diana and Michael. The intent is, I also teach, and I've been teaching for 15 years at Berkeley Law School. The intent is you can get a copy of these slides, have the rubric or basics to go to your lawyer and say, this is what I want to set up. I'm trying to open source this information. This is not about calling me. You can call me. I'll give you a half an hour for free anytime. But this is about getting these ideas, because this scaffolding and the structure that we have put in place actually works, and it now works at scale because we've tried it for the last 25 years. So what are we talking about? The first thing I'll just say is there are a whole bunch of terms. Ignore them for the most part. There's a lot of noise going back and forth. Here we are really just talking about making sure your company can continue to have a positive impact on society, on the people you're intending to benefit with your science, on your employees, and everything else. So again, I could go into detail, but I won't. So first is thinking about the scaffolding, the corporate form for your company. Most people use general corporations. Again, that yields a result absent other things that we'll talk about, which means a result meaning you have to focus on returns for your shareholders. You have to. There are some clarifications, but there are now these new corporate forms out there. Again, these have been around now for about 10 years, and the Delaware PBC is the best known and the one that works the best. And as I said, there are now 23 publicly traded PBCs out there. So this is not, you know, I spoke at the New York Stock Exchange a couple weeks ago, and the number 2 at JP Morgan Chase said, the markets are ready for PBCs. So in a nutshell, what a PBC is, it has dual fiduciary duty. You have a duty running that company to think about your shareholders and to focus on your shareholders. You also have a duty to what you define as your public benefit. What you say is, whether it's climate change, whether it is fundamentally changing human health, whatever it is. And so you have a dual fiduciary duties. There are a lot of ramifications for that, but I can't do it in 1 minute. So that's why there's information here. Super voting stock, you've all heard of it. Using super voting stock to maintain a focus on impact is actually a very valuable tool. But even more valuable is thinking about who is what I call the sentinel, who is holding that stock. It can be a public charity. It also can be a purpose trust. And we spent 3.5 years with the redesign of Patagonia, and we ended up with a PPT, or a perpetual purpose trust. If you were a founder, instead of super voting stock that you hold yourself, you could think about setting up a perpetual purpose trust that you can have little or no or a whole bunch of control over, and you can make sure that long-term, in perpetuity, long after you're gone, that mission is retained because they are holding the shares in the underlying company. This is also what we set up for change.org. Executive compensation, this is another really good idea to tie. If you set certain values or goals for your organization, actually have ways of measuring them and tie your compensation to them. The companies that did this the first, starting about 15 years ago, were actually HP and Nike, and they've done a phenomenal job. And if you look at how those companies have weathered the last 10 years, it's been remarkable. Governance, it's all about governance, protective provisions, how you design your board, how you think about the rights of your shareholders, and again, the perpetual purpose trust. Doing impact, if you are scientists and founders in this room, your investors will do diligence on you. You can do diligence on them too, because I've lived through the 2001 and the 2008 and recent, and I will say the companies that survive, they've got a fabulous idea, but they also are partners with their investors. The investors are not, the investors are also looking long term and care about the impact. And the public charity sidecar, Michael mentioned this. I just wanted to frame this and give you a concrete example. You set up a for-profit company. You can have a public charity sidecar, not a foundation, or you can be a nonprofit with a for-profit sidecar. I don't recommend any company do this at a startup phase because it's a little complicated, but I'll give you the example of the public company sidecar with Flexport. If you look at the world's disasters, they are now a private company with a valuation north of $10 billion, and they are the #1 provider of logistics services to areas of need. Because they do it with a sidecar public charity that is fiscally sponsored, they take donations. Those donations can buy at cost their logistics services. And if you look at the American Red Cross, any of the aid organizations, the goods themselves are less than 50% of the cost. Almost all of the cost to reach Gaza, to reach Israel right now, is the logistics. There is no way a company could do that with a little foundation. The whole 1% on the side foundation crap is just that. It is complete crap. Don't do it. I actually used to think it was ineffective. Now I know that it is a huge part of the problem because you guys tithe 1% and then you feel like you've done good. You're like, hey, we've solved the problem. And in fact, on issues in science and issues in climate and issues in equality, we've had all of this focus on philanthropy, and things are getting worse and worse and worse if somebody would start measuring the return on that investment. So again, a little complicated to set up, but it works. Third-party screening, you can do it through licensing. I warned you there were a lot of words. And then actually we've done a lot of work on exits. And if you want to, we have a study because there are a lot of investors and family offices that have started this focus. And last year we worked with Columbia Business School and we got data on 250 deals where investors had gone in with a thesis around impact to actually determine what the impact was going to be on valuation, and through that exit, how you could make sure that the impact continued through that exit, and it works. So I did that in 10 minutes. And if you'd like the slides, somebody can get them to you. Diana? Michael? Okay, thank you.